Hey guys, hi, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Steven, and Buddy. He is resting next to me in his chair. So this morning I was on a layover in San Diego, and I got a message from one of my subscribers. She had just received her conditional job offer for another airline. Congratulations. She mentioned that she has an older child, a younger child, and that she'd been a hairstylist for many years. And I suspect the question was because she's trying to figure out how she can balance being a mom, a hairstylist, and a flight attendant. Her question was, how many hours do we typically work a week as a flight attendant? And I tried to answer the question as well as I could in the message, but it's really a difficult question to answer because scheduling and hours are just sort of an abstract thought when it comes to being a flight attendant. It's a very strange thing to get your head around. So I figured I'd make a video, which is probably going to confuse a lot of people. I'm going to try my best to keep it very, very simple. But to give you an idea in terms of what a schedule is kind of like, what block hours are versus credit, and what we're paid for, what we're not paid for, and to give you sort of an idea of what a normal schedule looks like. I think this video would have helped me when I was becoming a flight attendant prepare myself for the randomness of our life. So I would be remiss if I did not start with being on reserve. Now, I'll say that I'll be sharing my own experience with my airline. It's not so dissimilar to other reserve or line holders in any other airline. Many airlines offer alternating reserve periods or months. I want to say American and Southwest are you're on reserve, and then you have a line month, and then you're on reserve, and then you have a month of a line, and back and forth until either enough time has passed, years, or you have achieved enough seniority where you are no longer on reserve, which takes years with many airlines. The only airline I think that offers you a line right off the bat out of training is Delta. But even then, I think until you reach a certain point in your career, you are on reserve 6 days a month. If I'm wrong on any of that, somebody please correct me. The Delta, that is a pretty sweet deal. If you get a line right off the bat and you have to sit reserve for 6 days a month, that would be doable. That would be fine. In my company, when you're on reserve, you're on flat reserve. You don't get a line until you get a line. But thankfully, we're so small and we're growing so fast that fairly often enough, you get a line faster than you would with a larger legacy airline. I was on reserve for 11 months, and then, 10 months, and then I was ready exempt, which means in my airline that we are no longer obligated to sit airport standby, which is gorgeous. So for that month, for 1 month, I did not have to sit airport reserve or ready reserve. And then the next month, I actually got a line, and I've had a line since, which is beauteous. Love it. I'll never see reserve again, unless I forget to bid, which is never going to happen. So when you're on reserve, there are times of the year that you'll work more, and there are times that you'll work less. During chaotic seasons like winter, summertime when there's a lot of flying, spring break, there's probably a good chance you'll fly more often because more things happen to flight attendants. So a flight is delayed and they can't make their connecting flight, they're going to call for reserves to take up the slack and continue that schedule. Flights are canceled. All sorts of reasons. You know, if someone gets sick or can't fly, calls out sick, they're going to call for a reserve to take that person's place. So during different times of the year, a reserve flight attendant will fly more often. There are times that you'll hardly see these inside of an aircraft. The busiest I've ever been on reserve was October, that first October, where I flew probably 90 plus hours, probably a little bit more than 90 hours that month. I blocked, and that's a word I'll use, I'll come back to later on. I blocked about 90 plus hours that month. The least I worked while on reserve was December, I think, of last year, just before I started filming these videos, where I blocked less than 20 hours that month. I literally hardly saw the inside of an aircraft. In the case where I don't work up to 72 hours, in my company, we have a guarantee, well, every airline has a guaranteed minimum. They pay you a minimum of number of hours, no matter if you work them or not, and it's a minimum guaranteed. So in my company, our guaranteed minimum is 72 hours. So that December, I was paid for 72 hours of work, even though I only blocked 20 or less than 20. The month where I worked my tail off, and for me, 90 hours is a lot of flying, because I worked 90 hours, I got my 72 hours, but I also got the balance of that 90. So I received pay for all of those hours. Anything in my company over 85 is time and a half. So you get a little bit more money for that. The only really awful part about being on reserve and not flying is that you don't accumulate per diem. Now, per diem in my company, and later on I'm going to show you, I'll tell you how many hours I'm going to be away from base I'm scheduled this month, and you'll get an idea of how much that per diem adds up. So when you're flying a lot on reserve, that's awesome, because I'd rather fly than not, because I love my job. But I'd also like to fly because I'm getting per diem. Every hour we're away from our domicile or our base, we're getting $2.31 an hour. That's my base in 2019. That's my airline in 2019. You may get more, you may get less. So if you're not flying a lot, you're not getting a lot of per diem. If you're flying a lot, you're getting a lot of per diem. And that does add up to make a paycheck a little bit more survivable. So that's the only part about not flying a lot. It kind of bites. On the flip side, you know, my first summer working in this job when I was on reserve, I flew a fair amount. But while I was on reserve, I spent most of my reserve sitting by the pool with a cold insulated container full of iced tea or soda with my cell phone in a pool. Gorgeous. There were many ways to spend a reserve that are worse. So reserve for me was nice. I didn't earn a lot of money on reserve because I wasn't flying a lot that first summer. But the quality of my life was just really nice. Of course, I was eating ramen noodles every single day. Let's see. Yeah, those are my notes. I have my laptop here for some notes. Yes, so when you're on reserve, you will get paid for a minimum number of hours no matter what. And for my company, that's 72. Yours might be 75. It might be 78. It might be more. If you work more than those 72 or more than that minimum number of hours, you're paid for that full number of hours no matter what. So you're not like getting screwed by working a full month. Let's see. I mentioned block hours earlier, so I'm going to talk for a moment about last month's schedule because it was a little bit more interesting, and then I'll touch on my schedule this month to give you a really good idea in terms of what a absolutely normal, boring schedule looks like. And to answer that question, sort of, as well as I can, how many hours a week does a flight attendant work? So last month, excuse me, I'm not sure if I mentioned or defined block hours. Possibly, I may have, but I talk so much I forget what I say. So if I haven't yet defined a block hour is the time that the boarding door has closed, the aircraft is full of passengers, everyone has boarded. The block, the thing that stops the wheel of the aircraft from moving, has been pulled away from the wheel, the door has closed, and we're about to pull away from the gate. That's the beginning of our block hours. And our block hours end when we arrive at the gate of our destination, and those blocks are put next to the wheels again, so the aircraft can't move, and that door opens up and our guests start to deplane. So a block hour is what we're paid for. The time before that, which is when we have to be in the crew room, when we have to get to our aircraft, when we're in the aircraft doing our safety checks, when we're boarding the aircraft, when our guests are boarding the aircraft and we're handling seat duplications and making sure car seats are appropriate and we're doing all that work, we're not paid for any of that time. We're only paid for our block hours or credit hours, which I'll touch on in a moment. So we're paid for those block hours only. So the door close to door open is what we're paid for. So when I say that during October of the year before, my first October, I worked a lot. I worked 90 block hours. That's the number of hours I was in an aircraft with the doors closed being paid. All the hours between, before, and after were not being paid for. I know that doesn't sound fair, and it's easy to complain about that, but that is the way of the world. It is how the system is with every airline in the country, and there would have to be some big actions taken by every single flight attendant in the country, if not the world, to change that. But so there you go. But the December, when I blocked less than 20 hours. Again, I'm in the aircraft less than 20 hours that whole month, and I was paid for those 20 hours, plus the difference between the 20 and that 72, which is my guaranteed minimum. Have I lost you yet? I know. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time because, we typically think of a work week as being 40 hours. And for me, this month in February of 2019, I'm blocked at working 76 hours and I think 5 minutes, which is a full-time schedule. It's not like an amazing amount of hours, but it's my basic hours that are scheduled. The way my schedule is built this month, it looks like I have 2 blocks of 5 days off that I could possibly pick up a trip if I want to make a little extra money, but it doesn't look like I'm gonna. So last month, if you go back and watch the video about DORs, Day of Restoration, I was owed a day off because of a cancellation. I had to deadhead back to my base on the day off, so I was owed another day off. The way that they gave me that day off, they took me off of 2 days flying because they couldn't, per contract, get me to base on time. It's a long story. But they took me off of 2 days where I lost those hours technically, but I was paid for them because I have something called pay protection in my company. So last month, because there were some cancellations, I had to deadhead a lot last month, I was blocked. I worked doors closed to door open 41 hours and 40 minutes. Not a lot of coins, right? But I was credited at 86 hours and 29 minutes. So I blocked 41 hours and 40 minutes, meaning I worked the aircraft. I was in the aircraft. Doors were closed. I was doing my job being paid. The remainder, the other 45 hours, I was either credited those hours because I wasn't working, but I was supposed to be paid for them anyway. That's a complicated, that's complicated. Or I was deadheading. And deadheading, as you probably know, is when I'm in uniform on the aircraft in a passenger seat, not technically working the flight, but I could be called upon to work the flight if needed or to help out if there was an emergency. So last month, I was only blocked at 41.40, but I got credit for 86.29, which is pretty sweet. Now let's talk about this month. We're at 15 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. You must really want to know about scheduling if you're still watching this video. All right, so it's hard to answer that question. How many hours a week do you work? So I'm gonna just go over, I would show you this screen, but it shows all of my coworkers' names, and I don't think that they would like that. But I can see on this screen that I am number 413 on base, and we have 646 employees on base, so that's not too bad. I'm number 2302, I think, out of almost 35 or 3600 flight attendants in our company. So my seniority is not too bad for having been here just under 2 years, so it's not bad, not that bad. But my schedule for February, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trips. I have 5 3-day trips. They're sprinkled through the month fairly evenly. There are 2 of them that are back to back that are, so I'm working, it looks like I'm working 6 days in a row, and I kind of technically am. So the first trip I just finished was on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of February. I'm off the 6th and 7th. On the 8th, 9th, and 10th, I fly. I'm in Baltimore, Atlanta, and then back in Las Vegas. The 16th, 17th, 18th is a trip. Then the 19th, 20th, and 21st, I have another trip. And then I've got, my last trip is Wednesday the 27th, 28th, and the 1st of March. So if you're lucky and you like to work 4-day trips, I don't. I'm away from Buddy for too long. If you have a regular set, regular schedule that month, and you have 4 4-day trips, you may work 4 days each week of that month. And that would make the question, how many days a week do you fly as a flight attendant? Easy, but that almost never happens. So this month, I'm blocked. And you know what blocking means. I'm blocked at working 76 hours and 5 minutes. That could increase if I choose and am able to pick up a trip in open time or on the trade board. And the times I'd be able to do that are on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, or 15th, as long as I have enough time between trips to make that legal, or on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and the 26th. So there's 2 periods of time that I have pretty wide open where I could try to pick up another trip or 2 to make a little bit of extra money for my birthday next month. I turn 50 next month. I would like to go away somewhere, but if I can pick up a trip or 2, maybe I will. And if you remember, I mentioned per diem and how per diem can add up. 76 hours and 5 minutes is not that far away from 72, our guaranteed minimum if we were on reserve, right? So I wouldn't be making a heck of a lot more money as a line holder than I would be as a reserve flight attendant. I'd be making about the same money. If I were on reserve with the same hourly pay, I'd be making as much money as a line holder with those hours. But per diem adds up. And my schedule here shows me that I'm away from base. It's TAFB, time away from base. I'll be scheduled to be away from base 281 hours and 23 minutes. Now, you can do the math there. I'm not going to do it. But multiply that by $2.31 an hour. That is what makes being a line holder with my level of seniority a little bit more lucrative in terms of survivability. Because if I could only got paid for those 76 hours, it would not be very easy. But because I will be working block 281 hours and 23 minutes, that will make my paycheck more survivable. Let's see, duty time. I did not really recognize this. I didn't notice this in the past. I'm so glad I'm making this video. This actually tells me my duty time. It looks like my duty time this month, my duty hours, will be 115 hours and 46 minutes. So that's the amount of hours I'll be on duty this month. So 120, if you work a 9-to-5 job, you work 8 hours a day, you would be on duty working for 120 hours a month, right? Being paid 40 hours a week. I will be on duty 115 hours, but I'm being paid for 76. That is not a complaint. That's just reality of it. It is not not an easy reality to get used to when you're new as a flight attendant. So I'll be working technically just about what a full-time job is, but I'm being paid for 76 hours. I'm trying to think if I want to. So that's a little heads up in terms of scheduling hours that we typically work, what we're paid for, what we're not paid for. So if that's what you're looking for, you might want to end that and stop watching this video now. I'm going to talk a little bit about this this trip I just finished now, to maybe go a little bit more in depth into what a schedule might look like and how it's really worked. So if that was your question earlier, there you go. I'm going to keep talking, so this video is going to be a little bit longer for those people who are sadists and want to keep listening to me talk. So this this trip that I was just on, the first day had 3 legs. We flew from Las Vegas. My show time was 10:58 a.m. My show time was, 10:58 a.m. We flew from Las Vegas to Houston. We were blocked at 3 hours and 1 minute. We were on the ground for 1 hour and 9 minutes. And that's the time that we landed, that we deplaned, and then we boarded the aircraft for the next leg, which was from Houston to New Orleans. That was blocked at 1 hour and 5 minutes. We were on the ground for 58 minutes. And the ground time we're not paid for, again. We're just paid for the block hours. So, and the next leg was New Orleans to Fort Lauderdale, and that was blocked at 1 hour and 50 minutes. A total block time for that trip, that day, was 5 hours and 56 minutes. Now, it does not show my duty day on here, but, you know, my day started at basically 11 a.m. West Coast, and it ended at 11 p.m. East Coast time. And I was paid for 5 hours and 56 minutes. So it's a long day, and it doesn't seem like you're paid that much. But, the job is amazing. And the quality of life is amazing. And after that, I was in Fort Lauderdale for 18 hours. So, I mean, it could be worse, right? So the next day was a little easier. It was Fort Lauderdale to Houston. Our show time was 5:30 p.m., which is 17:30 if you want to get used to military time, and you should if you are going to be a flight attendant. That was blocked at 2 hours and 48 minutes. The leg from Houston to San Diego was blocked at 3 hours and 14 minutes. A duty day of block time of 6 hours and 2 minutes. And then the last day was super easy. Our show time was 2 p.m. We got back into Las Vegas at 4 p.m. And that was blocked at 1 hour and 12 minutes. So the total block time for this trip, this 3-day trip, was 13 hours and 10 minutes, which isn't the best 3-day. It's a good 3-day is probably at least 15, 18, 19 hours. that would be a great 3-day. 13 hours, it's not a lot of credit for a 3-day trip, but there you go. So I was credited for 13 hours and 37 minutes. My next trip is blocked at 17 hours and 28 minutes, so that's a much better 3-day. The trip after that is 1646. The trip after that, I'm blocked at 13 hours and 45 minutes, and the trip after that is 14 hours and 31 minutes. So none of these trips are really taxing because they don't involve super long legs, and there's not many legs each day. So that's sort of a breakdown in terms of what we're paid for, what we're not paid for, and a little lingo in terms of what it's like to be a flight attendant and look at your schedule. I know, if you have no idea what I said, welcome to the club. You'll understand it when you start flying after a couple months. The first month or two, it is a little challenging, and it's a little frustrating when you think about how much time we put in and how many hours that we are available and we are working that we're not paid for. When you think of how few hours we're technically paid for, it can be very frustrating, and there's a little resentment that you'll build, and then that'll just have to go away. You'll have to work through that. It's just the way it is. If you guys have any questions or need any clarification on any of what I said, please leave a comment below. I would love to compile some questions for a future question and answer video. So if you have any questions about being a flight attendant, layovers, I'm going to do a video about sleeping and how to rest, or how I handle the lack of sleep as a flight attendant. So that video is coming soon. But if you have any questions about being a flight attendant, or questions about me, my life, or Buddy, of course, my favorite topic, certainly leave a comment or a question below. I'd like to do a question and answer video maybe next week. So leave some questions below, and I will talk to you then. Okay? Thank you very much for watching, and fly safe.